Hello and welcome to another Doctor's Assistant 1 video. Today I'm doing a review of Doctor Who The Macra. It is the 1st of July 2023. First of all, I'll be going through the packaging of this release, which I think released back in 2019, which is bloody hell, like 4 years ago now. Yeah, like 4 years ago, which is kind of bonkers. Yeah, I think if you look back on my YouTube videos, I think I got this for one of my birthdays a few years back as well, so that's cool. It's another second animated story / missing story that has now been, fortunately for us as Doctor Who fans, reconstructed as an animation even, that I'm reviewing on the channel. Yeah, I think the cover's okay. You've got like electric stuff, Pat Troughton in the middle, the macra in behind, 2 discs, PG, the Troughton years, or the Patrick Troughton years, 1966 to 1969. Patrick Troughton there, Doctor Who, BBC, DVD. On the spine you've got the usual information, and then on the back you've got, what have you got on the back? You've got the information. You've got the you've got the stills from the episode in colour. You've got a bio or little synopsis even of the story, special features, and the original sort of people who made the original story as well as the more recent animation. You've got 2 discs, which at first I was very confused about, but one is parts 1 through 4. In black and white and the special features, and then the other is parts 1 through 4 in colour and the special features, and then you also get the booklet, which is a nice booklet, production notes with stills and some images from the original episode, as well as some concept image of what a macro was meant to be, or sort of what it's inspired by even. I can't remember if there was a colour and a not colour version of the Power of the Daleks, because that was the last animation that I watched and then reviewed for the channel. But because, as I said in that review, I'd watched that in black and white, whatever I was going to watch next from the 60s Doctor Who animation stuff, I wanted it to be also in black and white. Originally I was always going to watch these in colour, I guess, because I watched, I think, Evil of the Daleks in colour, but then because I watched The Power of the Daleks in black and white, I just want to watch all of them in black and white now. I've also seen, I can't remember if I've reviewed it on the channel or not, but I've definitely watched it at least, or late parts of The Invasion, and part of that is missing, so part of that was animated, but that was all in black and white, because obviously all the stuff that was actually filmed was in black and white, so it'd be a bit odd if then parts of it were in colour, if that makes sense. But it's nice that you get the option of whether or not you want to watch it in colour or if you want to watch it in black and white. The animation is decent. It's probably not as good as The Power of the Daleks in terms of animation, although story-wise it's a bit better paced, I'd say. I wouldn't say it's a better story, I'd just say it's more palatable, easier watch, I'd say. But then I was watching The Power of the Daleks in one sitting, so that's on me maybe. Maybe I could have split it up across 2 days, if it weren't for the fact that I was reviewing it for the channel. I guess I might have done that. But also this one's only a little 4-parter, although this one does have 3 companions, whereas Power had 2 companions. I think the Doctor got to shine a bit more in that one. He seemed a bit more assertive in that story, and that. But yeah, I think Chris Chapman, even, however you pronounce his name, from the Blu-ray, the Doctor Who Collection DVD Blu-ray docs, documentaries that he does for those, he best, on the Review of Death, said that this story is basically Baby's first 1984, George Orwell's 1984, and I can kind of see that. This episode originally released, or aired, should I say, back in 1967, so a year later than The Power of the Daleks, yeah, it's sort of that sort of traditional base under siege, well, not even base under siege, but traditional sort of Doctor swoops into far-right fascist colony, sorts out them and de-brainwashes them, and they kind of rebel against the macra evil fascists. Although I guess the twist being that they're not just, another right-wing sort of bad humanoid faction or something, which is kind of predictable and very generic and boring. Like the Sunmakers, I can't stand that episode. And then I guess this episode also would later inspire stuff like the Sunmakers in the classic series, as well as the Happiness Patrol, although I've not watched Happiness Patrol, unfortunately. I think Polly, companion-wise, is probably the least or the least interesting. She has the least to do, I think. Ben kind of gets brainwashed, and then Jamie just seems like the most sort of buddy with Pertwee and that, sort of most sort of second in command, I guess, to the Doctor. I do like the bits where the Doctor's playing the recorder. I think he's probably the best animated character of the four of them. I think Polly looks a bit weird because I'm pretty sure in The Power of the Daleks she had like long hair, and then in this she has short hair, and I don't know if that's accurate to the actual story, like the original filming of this, because obviously in terms of the macra in the room, as it were, they have taken a lot of creative liberty with that. I have seen images of the original 1967, for lack of a better term, prop, the sort of fiberglass, sort of big hunking prop thing that they were going to be using for the original episode, and yeah, it's pretty bad looking now, / dated, I guess. I don't even know if it was like cutting edge back then, but as I say, to someone these days it would have been laughable to see, and that, whereas obviously in this you have actually got really big, well animated and rigged, as it were, 3D-ish or 2.5D 3D-ish sort of crabs that, spoiler alert, at one point do pick up Polly, which was kind of cool. And there is a sinisterness to the story. They are trying to sort of give it this sort of clean, sort of happy-go-lucky wash at the top or on the surface level, but then everyone isn't so happy, I guess. But again, I think there is a bit more depth in some later Doctor Who stories like this, but I guess you've got to, when reviewing these stories, I've got to take into consideration that 60s Doctor Who is such early days. 1967, that would be like season 5, so like Doctor Who's been on for 5 years at this point, so this would have been like a big epic blockbuster at the time, on a small scale of course, but for the kids watching it at the time, this must have been absolutely thrilling, I guess. The Doctor Who theme is animated, and has an animated picture of like Patrick Troughton, which is a bit odd because that's kind of how I thought The Power of the Daleks was going to deal with the intro, but then that had just like the original film stuff of William Hartnell's title sequence. But again, I'm not sure if this is all accurate. I mean, I assume by season 5 they've obviously got a new title sequence in the main show. What was I going to say? I think parts 1 and 2 are probably the standout for me. Part 3 obviously is a bit padding, and then part 4 you're kind of just wrapping up the story to move on to the next one. Although that being said, I genuinely can't even... I watched this story this morning and I genuinely can't remember how they beat up or defeat even the macra, which I thought was a bit odd. So I feel like part of me is like gonna criticise this for having a rushed ending, but then maybe it's on me for not paying enough attention. Although there is quite a lot of loud music and loud noises and effects, I guess it's necessary to keep those in where possible, and maybe even have them still at the same loudness as the original ones would have been. But yeah, I think again, character-wise, the best two, in inverted commas, characters, if you can even call the macra characters that are animated, are the macra, and fortunately for me, the Doctor, maybe even Jamie. Ben kind of feels a bit flat animation-wise. and likewise with Polly, I guess, but they try and add a bit of detail to like Ben's face, and it just looks a bit weird, and I don't particularly care for him. I mean, he has a subplot with being brainwashed, but I don't really know him that well as a character to know, like, would this be likely something that would likely happen to him? Is he quite weak-willed? Is he quite a strong character? Is he not? Is he assertive? Is he passive? Is he this? Is he that? You know, because in my mind, I always just associate Pat Troughton with Jamie and Zoe, or Jamie and someone else, like another female companion whose name escapes me. But either way, I always just assume, I always associate Pat Troughton's era with Jamie, one female companion from either the past or the future, and then the Doctor, whereas I forget that Ben and Polly kind of tag along, or Jamie gets introduced in Pat Troughton's second story, The Highlanders, but Ben and Polly are still there, so they are sort of like carry over from Hartnell, and then they leave, and then but Fraser Hines and or Jamie is there as well for a time, and then those two leave, and then but Fraser's still there as like the carryover at that point. But yeah, I think it's a fun B-movie sort of thing as well. It's sort of like 1984 meets sort of like Snakes on a Plane, I guess, with the big macra and that, and there's the gas mines, and then that kind of ties in with like Gridlock, which I quite like, as well as someone says something about like, you know, we go to work and we are happy, 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 which then immediately made me think, oh shit, like, is like the happy, happy drug dealers at the beginning of Gridlock like a reference, like a sly reference from Russell to this story back in like 1967, like, you know, just little things like that. I wonder if that's like a little callback, as it were. But yeah, I'd give this like a 7 out of 10. I'd be interested to watch the colour version. It's slim in terms of the actual release. It's slim on terms of special features, which is a bit of a shame. But then I don't know. I don't know if this is like one of the big greats, as it were, in terms of the missing stories. I don't think it is. I think it was more sort of mythologized. Is that the right word? Or hyped up when obviously we didn't have this story. But now that we do, I don't feel like as many people talk about this story, although I guess the biggest iconic line from this is, "There's no such thing as macra," which I do quite like saying out loud, because I'm insane. But yeah, I think again it's very sort of indicative of the I was about to say the Pertwee years, but the Pat Troughton years. You know, you've got your sort of running around, and the colony stuff looks great, like the exteriors of the colony, I like them, where in the show it might have just looked a bit like not even a wobbly set, but just like a bit like a model shot, I guess, of a city, whereas this looks nicer in animation, I guess, or you can do more with the exterior of a city, like this colony and that, you know. And as I say, the macra are depicted well here, and then in Gridlock, I like the fact that Russell hasn't just gone, well, let's just have them breathe something else, when actually they're breathing the gas in that sequel story and that. And I don't know if this is accurate to the original airing of this story, but the story first starts without the title sequence, which I thought was a bit odd, and then it has the title sequence, which again is a bit odd, because in my mind it should just have title sequence then the rest of the story, like most classic Doctor Who stories, but it doesn't. It sort of starts out in the TARDIS sort of swirling above this planet, and then the scanner kind of glitches a bit, and then you see a bit of a macra, and then the title sequence happens, which I thought was a bit odd, but I don't know if that's actually like happened in the original 1967 macra terror, or if that's just artistic license on the people making it back in 2019's decision. I don't know, but yeah, I'd give Macra Terror as a story a 7 out of 10. It's a fun, decent B-movie sort of Doctor Who's first 1984 sort of anti-fascism sort of story. I don't even want to call it Base Under Siege, but yeah, I'd give it a 7 out of 10. Thanks for watching. Please do comment, rate, and subscribe to the channel.